Okay, picture this. You are having literally the absolute worst day of your life. I mean, maybe you got dumped, maybe your boss completely humiliated you, or maybe you just dropped your phone face down on the concrete and watched it shatter into a million pieces. You come home completely defeated, you don't say a single word, and your dog, who has spent the entire day aggressively napping on your couch, immediately walks over, puts his head right in your lap, and stares at you with those enormous, warm eyes. How did he know? You didn't cry, you barely even made a sound. Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going on a journey into the cinematic, high-tech, evolutionary biology of emotion. We're going to figure out exactly what is happening under the hood when an animal senses your pain. Okay, let's dive into this. That incredible moment where you walk through the front door and the air just kind of shifts isn't just some heartwarming coincidence. As that quote notes, he felt it before you even sat down. But, for the longest time, science absolutely refused to acknowledge this was happening. For most of the 20th century, the dominant view in biology was this concept called behaviorism. This was a model that basically viewed animals as, well, nothing more than biological machines. Under that outdated framework, a dog wagging its tail wasn't actually expressing joy, it was just executing a hardwired behavioral reflex. It was a very clinical, very tidy view of the world, and it completely ignored the reality of what actually happens when different species connect. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive turning point it represents in science. On the left, we've got that clinical, frankly ridiculous behaviorism. But contrasting that on the right is the undeniable truth brought to light by modern neuroscience and field observation. Researchers simply couldn't ignore what they were actually seeing out in the wild anymore. They watched chimpanzees going through prolonged periods of lethargy, what we would absolutely call depression after losing a close companion. They saw dolphins staying near deceased calves long after any practical survival reason had passed. Listen, biological machines don't grieve. They don't make detours to visit their dead. It took neuroscience to finally shatter that behaviorist model and reveal that animals are actually equipped with deeply ancient neural hardware designed specifically for emotional processing. Which brings us to the true star of our emotional architecture, the limbic system. I really want you to think of this not just as a mundane part of the brain, but as glowing, ancient evolutionary architecture. The limbic system is the network responsible for processing emotions. And here is the truly staggering truth. It is not a uniquely human invention, not even close. It's present in varying forms across virtually all mammals. Traces of it even show up in birds and fish. This proves that emotion is a highly functional survival tool that is literally hundreds of millions of years older than humanity itself. We humans didn't invent emotion, we just inherited it. And these ancient emotional functions, they are what literally kept mammals alive. Think about it. Fear isn't a weakness, it's a brilliant alarm system that keeps you away from predators. Attachment isn't just fuzzy sentimentality, it's the actual glue that bonds social animals into tight groups that survive infinitely better than isolated individuals. And grief? Well, grief is a critical biological signal that something absolutely vital to your survival has just been lost. Emotion is fundamentally functional. It works. And if animals have the same neurological hardware, the next obvious question we have to ask is, how exactly do they detect these specific emotions in us? To answer that, we've got to zoom way into the micro level. 300 million. That is the staggering number of olfactory receptors in a dog's nose, compared to a human's measly 6 million. Actually, measly might be an understatement. This doesn't mean dogs just have a slightly sharper sense of smell than we do. It means they are walking biological supercomputers, experiencing a fundamentally different reality. To put that into perspective, it's like comparing someone who can see a candle burning right in front of their face to someone who can spot a single candle flame from 80 kilometers away on a pitch-black night. When a dog looks at you, they aren't just seeing you visually, they are reading your entire chemical history. Because emotional distress isn't just a poetic metaphor floating around in your head. Sadness is a literal molecular event. When you're sad, your body is chemically different. Your cortisol levels spike, your adrenaline shifts, your heart rate fluctuates, and the actual physical composition of your breath and sweat changes. These are real, measurable compounds that literally float off your body and into the surrounding air. So your dog? They're inhaling an instant, high-definition biochemical report of your exact emotional state the very second you step foot into the room. So the crucial point is that this isn't some mystical, vague sixth sense. It is highly, highly precise. 93%. In an absolutely fascinating 2022 study published in the journal PLOS One, researchers trained dogs to discriminate between human breath and sweat samples from stressed states versus relaxed states. Using absolutely no visual cues, just a simple chemical signal wiped on a cotton swab, the dogs accurately identified human stress with over 93% accuracy. They are smelling your stress exactly the same way you and I might smell smoke from a bonfire 2 streets over. But scent is really only half the story here. Over the 15,000 to 40,000 years that dogs have lived alongside humans, natural selection did something just incredible. Dogs actually evolved specialized cognitive machinery purely to read human faces. When scanning a human face, dogs process it using what's called a left gaze bias. Basically, they instinctively look first to the right side of our faces. Why? Because that's the side that most strongly communicates emotional state in humans due to our brain's right hemisphere dominance. And get this, that is the exact same bias humans naturally use with each other. Once the dog reads that microexpression, they instantly adjust their behavior, happily approaching a relaxed face or acting super hesitant and guarded around an angry one. But hey, what about cats, right? They definitely have a reputation for being emotionally aloof. But there's a structural, evolutionary reason for that. Unlike dogs, who are bred over millennia specifically for emotional labor and companionship, cats were primarily domesticated for pest control. The evolutionary contract was just totally different. But a brilliant study from Oakland University showed that cats do indeed react to human emotions, especially smiling versus frowning. However, the effect is overwhelmingly strongest with their own specific owners. Instead of developing a general human face reader like dogs did, cats intensely study you specifically. They build a completely bespoke, deeply personal emotional model of your unique microexpressions and movement patterns. They don't just know what a generic sad human looks like, they know exactly what you look like when you're sad. And this ability to read humans extends well beyond our living room pets. The timeline of this incredible 2018 study at the University of Sussex involving horses reveals something profound. So at hour 0, a horse is shown a simple photograph of a complete stranger with an angry facial expression. Hours later, the horse is introduced to that exact person in real life, but now the person is behaving completely neutrally. The result? No way around it, the horse exhibited significant wariness around the person who had been angry in the photograph. They are using memory-based emotional reasoning. They aren't just reacting on raw instinct, they are forming complex expectations across time, based on an emotional impression from a simple 2D photo. But what about animals that have never even seen our living rooms? What happens way out in the wild? This brings us to the absolute masters of the limbic system, elephants. They are, both neurologically and behaviorally, among the most emotionally sophisticated wild animals ever studied by science. They are quite literally the ultimate empathy engines of the natural world. They possess a deeply complex emotional architecture that frankly challenges everything we ever thought we knew about animal consciousness. And this brilliantly illustrates just how deep their emotional capacity goes. Elephants don't just survive out there, they deeply care. They actively console distressed members of their herd. They have highly specific vocalizations that researchers describe as pure joy when greeting long-absent friends. And incredibly, they mourn. They will literally return to the bones of their deceased years later, gently touching them with their trunks in a solemn ritual that serves absolutely zero biological survival function. But perhaps most awe-inspiring is their ability to cross biological lines entirely. Younger elephants have actually been observed approaching completely different animal species that are in distress, offering them calm, investigative reassurance. This incredible observation in wild elephants unlocks a massive realization for us. Empathy is not inherently species-locked. As long as the emotional signal is legible, empathy can operate straight across biological boundaries. From an elephant comforting a completely different species in the wild, right back to your living room with your dog or cat comforting you on your worst day. Our pets aren't doing some kind of parlor magic trick. They're simply extending this exact same ancient wild empathy to us, tuning into our specific frequency because we've lived together for so long. But detecting the emotion is only part of the puzzle, right? The real magic is the response. Just look at the data in this 2018 Johns Hopkins study. It reveals something incredible. Dogs were placed behind a transparent door with a magnetic latch, physically separating them from their owners. Half the owners were instructed to cry. The other half simply hummed quietly. The data is super clear. Dogs with crying owners were significantly more likely to push open the door. It wasn't just about passively detecting the sadness. It was about choosing a deliberate, intentional response to go help. But here is the absolute staggering detail from that study. The dogs who opened the door for their crying owners didn't do it in a frantic, panicked frenzy. They did it slowly. They did it calmly. The researchers concluded that the dogs were actively self-regulating their own emotional arousal. They were managing their own stress in real time so that they could be more present, more deliberate, and genuinely helpful to their human who was in distress. Honestly, that looks unsettlingly close to conscious choice and genuine, profound compassion. Let's just pause for a second and really take in this quote, because if you've ever been deeply sad, you know exactly how true this is. Animals don't try to fix you. When we humans see someone grieving, we kind of panic, don't we? We offer awkward advice, we try to reframe the situation, we desperately want to fix their pain, mostly just to make ourselves feel better. Animals don't carry that baggage or that agenda. They use their ancient limbic systems not to solve the puzzle of your sadness, but to simply stay with you. There's no need to force the situation forward. It's just warm, physical, completely unconditional presence, right there in the mess of it with you. Which leaves us with this final, lingering question. When ancient neural architecture, stuff shaped over hundreds of millions of years of evolution, powered by hundreds of millions of olfactory receptors, allows another species to cross the biological divide just to quietly sit with our deepest pain, what does it truly mean to be seen? Your pet isn't just reacting to stimuli. They are sharing a profound inherited emotional reality with you. And for a creature that doesn't even have the words to explain it, they somehow understand every single bit of it. Thanks for joining me for this explanation.